One. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. I
Hello.
always start with that. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm well, Jim, and you?
Good, thank you. Welcome everyone to another amazing podcast of Adventures in Truth. And we say amazing because we end up in places that we don't even know how we get there. But um, carrying on some deep and powerful conversations and trying to peel the onion and really dive into the things that we kind of take for granted as truths in our experience. And today, uh, I want to talk a little bit about, Jeff, if you're up for it, a conversation about, I'm not really sure what to call it. I know when we were talking before, we were saying maybe it's about what is reality. But I was watching this National Geographic program and it was about animals in South Africa, and it was a really great program. But somewhere in the midst of it, I kind of went down this rabbit hole in my experience where I was all of a sudden acutely aware of how much of what is supposedly in the world that I've never experienced in the world, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So, not claiming that it's real or not real, just kind of going. They were showing this 18-foot long python water snake thing, that was like, could eat crocodiles and whatever. And I know when I watch those programs, sometimes I tend to want to kind of place myself in that experience because I haven't had it and I don't know if I want it, but part of me is intrigued. So, that kind of projection thing where you kind of imagine yourself there and wonder what that would feel like. And then as I was there going, I have nothing to base this on. I mean, this literally could be considered my imagination because I've never seen that thing live. I don't know anyone who has. If I do, I don't know, I know. But that started carrying further and thinking about how much of what I see, or no, not what I see, what I think is in the world that I've never experienced, that I've never had in my experience, within the sphere of my five senses. If I go outside and I look as far as I can look, that's it. That's all there is. There's nothing that can prove or nothing that can disprove that anything else exists other than what I'm perceiving. Um, and that's really wild to me that that we can go to a place of kind of going, holy crow, there really is no, I don't have any answer of what's outside my perception. I only have what's inside my perception. Because otherwise I don't have any, I've never touched it. I've never seen it. I've never tasted it. I've never had an experience of it. And it
Right.
stimulates all of these really deep feelings, that are kind of, I was just saying earlier, sort of this sort of pulsing feeling of being on the verge of something, an understanding or a feeling. I don't know what it is, but it strikes me, and I'm quite fascinated in exploring this idea that it's not ever been in my perception, so I can't have a reality on it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Even to the degree of like, because it's been something that's been of interest to me lately, is watching the unfoldings going on in Washington and Trump and that whole thing, and realizing as I'm watching it that I feel like I'm watching a reality TV show because I don't have any reality on any of that reality.
Right.
So all you can do is be entertained by it because
Right.
it's like this bizarrely bad scripted reality show. And you go, this is weird. And I don't mean, and honestly, I don't mean that as a slam, and it can be taken that way because I mean, I think the man's an idiot, but I don't mean what I'm saying from the perspective of slamming anything. It's about perception. It's about recognizing where I am in relation to what that is and going, when I shut the TV off, none of that shows up in my reality. That's fascinating to me.
Sounds like you're camping on that for a minute.
I'm going to stay there for a minute.
Yeah.
Punt. No. Not really.
As you've been talking, I've had no less than 10 different ideas of relatable paths that are in my mind that I want to talk about in travel. Did you actually say Holy Crow?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. I think the holy cow thing comes from India. I wasn't aware that we have a religious, colloquialism regarding crows, but are you starting a new thing?
No, that's one that's been around for a long time.
Oh, well, it's perfect that I heard that then, because I've actually, in my reality, never heard that before. And I'm trying to think, why in the world would there be a holy crow? I get the holy cow, but what in the world is a holy crow? So let's go there. This is perfect for what we're talking about. You have a reality with a holy crow that I don't.
Yeah, and that reality is my impression of it is some or a couple of significant women in my life used to say it as a way of not saying shit or a way of not saying a curse word. They would say holy crow.
Okay.
Which I don't know has any bearing or relationship to anything. I don't, that I'm aware of, other than a way of not cursing.
Okay.
That's all I remember. That's all I remember of it.
So you're saying that there's no literal connection there, like there is with a cow.
Not that I'm aware of, but heck, I'll do a quick look just to see. Just because now you got me curious, because
you have heard of in India they do believe that cows are holy, and they
absolutely
actually believe that they're next in line to incarnate into humans. So it's rather interesting that they need to protect them and not eat them and all that sort of thing, so that they can jump up the next level and walk on the planet with 2 feet instead of 4 feet the next time around.
So there is actually a thing.
Okay.
What does holy crow mean? Holy crow is what Bella says instead of swearing. Since swearing is evil and immoral and taboo, but pedophilia and emotional abuse isn't, the character says phrases such as holy crow, dang flabbit, fiddlesticks, and oh chagrin to express their chagrined fury.
And Bella is a character where? What's the reference?
Well, if it's Bella, what I think is Bella is Disney. I think she was wasn't she the Little Mermaid, or she was one of them?
I think we're talking about Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast. Yes, apparently that was her thing. She would say holy crow instead of swearing. The origin, and then of course the origin of holy cow is a whole different one. That's there as well. Yeah.
Okay, so somehow that became a saying, just as it could have been anything, but it was an attempt not to swear.
Yeah.
Okay.
So interesting that it actually supported what I said I remembered. So, it isn't something new and different, but.
So that was one thing that I remember. I said there was like 10 things that came to my mind that I thought we could run off of and go down the path. Yesterday I was counseling a family that had 2 kids from Ethiopia that the family from Carlsbad had adopted and raised them since they were like 2 or 3 years old. They're now 14 and 15. And as we were talking, the dad asked the daughter, when they were talking about lying and following family rules, and the dad said it's okay to make mistakes. And I wanted to clarify what that meant to the kids, because I know he knew what that meant, but I didn't think the kids were following it's okay to make mistakes, because that's like half a statement. The other half of the statement is, I still love you. It's not going to change our relationship, but that part gets left out. So I paused on that and I said, let's be sure that the kids actually know that the reason it's okay to make mistakes is because you simply haven't learned what you're trying to learn yet. And I still love you, and it's not going to change our relationship. And the kids both looked at him sideways like, well, we actually, that's not our reality. Remember, we're orphans, and we've never really known love, an unconditional, continued, stable, non-relenting, permanent love. We don't know what that is. We have no connection to that. And so I asked mom and dad to ponder for a moment, because they actually have children of their own in regard to blood children that they've birthed. And they themselves grew up in families where they had a blood connection to their parents, and they know what committed familial love is. And these kids didn't. It wasn't in their reality. It was a heroic thing that mom and dad did to go to Uganda and get these two kids out of an orphanage and bring them to America and raise them as their own. That's a pretty cool thing to do. And to equip them that, they'll probably go to college and have a vastly different life than they would have had they stayed in Uganda. But it was really fascinating that, like, the whole family just camped on that notion for a moment that we're having two different realities here. And so I asked them to consider the difference between a person who had eyesight once upon a time and lost it and became blind. Has a different, in their blindness, they have a very different perception of reality than a person from birth who's been blind and who has never seen anything. And it's interesting. They're actually called, they're two different types of blindness. Yet, the reality is you can't see what's in front of you, but the person that once saw knows what a car is, knows what an elephant is, knows what they look like anyway. The person who has never seen anything has only an auditory experience of what a car or an elephant might be, or a kinesthetic experience. Anyway, this is a really complex issue that we're trying to put our arms around. And where it goes for me is I've spent decades digging into this thing and trying to talk about it and coach it and counsel it. And a quote that comes to mind for me, I was talking with my younger brother, who's a head football coach, and he was playing in a tournament where his team was competing for the national championship in Division III football. And he was going to be interviewed on ESPN at halftime, as they do. They try to drag the coaches over to the sidelines and get a quick, update on how's the game going and everything. And my brother had a tendency, before the first thing out of his mouth with most people is the word "I think." And then they say, like, I think that we could do better on third down, or I think we could do better on tackling, or I think, and what I shared with him is, in my experience, nobody really cares what you think. What people care about and they can't argue with is your experience. And so I said, if you change your statement to what we've experienced so far is that for some reason we can't tackle today, or what we've experienced so far is we would do better if we were completing our third down passes, or, something like, if you throw the word our experience so far, like, wow, we're playing on the East Coast at nighttime in weather temperatures that we don't get in Oregon. So we're not equipped for this, or the weather's really more of our experience, is that there's more of a factor here. Right. So what's interesting, when I was challenging him to bring experience into his comments, the listener can connect far more to their experiences and his experiences. What they'll find some common point that they can make a connection. But sometimes it's really hard to connect and make some common ground with thoughts and what we think. And quite honestly, thoughts are so random and so all over the place that I really am a firm believer that really nobody cares what you think, because, thinking is so easy and it's so all over the place. And it's like, where did you get it from? And
it's not, ultimately, the thought that goes through my head about that is, it's not an internalized experience. It's an externalized experience. So as you were talking about your brother's experience, and he was saying, I think that we didn't X, Y, Z, the first impression I had of that statement was, one, that it was not internalized, but secondly, that he doesn't believe or know yet what took place. So the thinking is a fishing expedition. But
Yes.
when it comes back to then after the halftime is over, whenever they come back and have a conversation, his whole thing changes because now he's had a chance to internalize it
Hmm.
and process it. Now it's an experience, like you were talking about, or a feeling.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, very different.
If I could challenge you for a moment, you said you think that the president is an idiot, and I'm trying to quote you as accurately as I can. And what's interesting about that statement is I think most people, well, here, I just said I think. What if we did a survey, you would probably have a lot of people that would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
However, there are, the facts are he's serving a position that some would say is the most powerful position on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And you generally can't get there by being an idiot. Generally speaking, the village idiot is not going to become the president of the United States and the most powerful man in the free world. Generally speaking, I don't know that we have.
Yeah. No.
Well, so how did that happen then?
I'm kidding.
Did someone else put him there?
Well,
It's like.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So anyway, all I was saying was there has been, through your experience and watching him speak or listening to him speak, watching him talk in circles, watching him say, I'm really serious about this on Monday, but on Tuesday, I'm completely on a different tangent, or I'm on the other side now. That seems idiotic. That seems hard to follow. That seems unpredictable. It seems willy-nilly, or all these other terms we could come up with.
Well, so if I apply what I just said to that statement, then what's true for me is that I have not internalized my experience of him. And I can tell you absolutely I have not, because I find it very challenging to believe everything I'm seeing. I struggle to I still go, is this the whole picture? Is it possible that this could be the whole picture? It doesn't make sense that it's the whole picture, but the part that I've seen, the part that has been presented in my reality, is the man is an idiot, the man is a misogynist, the man is a jerk, the man is a lot of things and a lot of judgments. But what do I think? I think it's hard not to go, okay, there's a lot of things being exposed because of what he's doing. There's a lot of things that are old, ugly, yucky, the underpinnings of this entire country, that are complete nonsense and are potentially illegal, or potentially not serving anyone but the individual who's trying to take the power. And so that harkens back to our history. That harkens back to, and I might say our history, human history, that, okay, we're living in a more civilized place, but when you have a less civilized person running that civilized place, it reverts back to what you would see in the Dark Ages.
Right.
I mean, literally goes back that far, where you're just kind of going, wait, have we really not progressed any further? We have more technology, but as a species, have we really not moved the needle any further than this?
Yeah.
So it makes it really challenging in the end to come down cleanly, because there's a part of me that recognizes how important the unfolding is. At the same time, that you're watching this teetering act of a very dangerous individual doing very dangerous things, wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
A
couple minutes ago, when you were talking about internalizing your experience, and you said, I don't know what to believe. I don't know if I can believe it all. I think is what you said. I don't know if I can believe it all.
As
you
it's
said
presented.
Something else. Yeah. And I'm like, why would you believe any of it? No matter who's saying it, why would we believe anything anybody's saying that's in that position, or that's we have things like, if a politician's lips are moving, he's lying. We know they're lying because their lips are moving. It's kind of a statement that we go off of, or a thing that we say. We rarely get the whole truth and the backstory and the context and blah, blah, blah. And we'll never know. We'll just never know.
Yeah. Well, that actually,
even history is distorted. They say, whoever wins the war writes the history.
Right. Exactly. That's what we did. That's what this country did. We rewrote history.
Talk about illegal. My gosh, taking the land from the Indians. I think that was a little bit illegal.
Oh, I learned yesterday, we also stole Hawaii from Hawaii.
Doesn't surprise me.
I was completely floored that it was, we basically took over, and there was a queen that lived there. The queen, I don't remember what her title. I remember when I used to go there, Scott would tell me about that whole history. But the whole history was, it was a manipulation, and the white Hawaiians on the island decided to go against the queen, and then brought the United States in to just sort of take it over, just sort of usurp it, take it and say it's ours. But anyway, that's not really the point of our conversation. But where I was going to go a second ago before that was, you were talking about belief, and I was asking myself as you were talking, because it was a very good point, which was, why do I, or why would I need or want or choose to believe? What is that about? Mm-hmm. And that stirs up a really weird emotional thing. Like, I don't know if it's a power thing or an emotional thing, but it sends these kind of strange twinges about how we attach to the reality through these beliefs. If I believe you, then it must be real. If I don't believe you, then it's not real. But that has nothing to do with reality. Because all of those beliefs are built on the perceptions of what we see based on our vibration, based on our core vibration, based on what filters through our energy and the way it filters, which is all about all the other beliefs and baggage and stuff that's sitting in there, or experiences that we have had, or other beliefs that we created in our imagination that we never had. How many people have you encountered in your experience? Because I know I've had quite a few, where in the process of coaching and working with them, we find out that a core belief system is complete imagination.
Right.
It has nothing to do with anything that actually even occurred. And actually, if we were able to go back to the original experience, the actual reality of the experience is vastly different than their memory of the experience. That happens a lot with parents and kids, where the kid has a perception and then builds a belief around that perception for their entire life. And then they're sitting around Thanksgiving dinner 25 years later talking about it. And the parents can't remember the circumstance because it didn't happen the way the kid thinks it happened. And so after a few minutes of hashing through, getting back to that point in time, then all of a sudden somebody remembers what actually took place. And then you have this conversation of, well, no, that's not actually, here's what actually happened. And then you're going, oh my gosh, I've been carrying that piece of stuff around for 25 years thinking whatever it is I think about it. And that has affected and infected everything I've done since then. It's incredible to me.
Mm-hmm. So yesterday I also found myself talking with a lady about how the division of mind between conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. We do a quick review of that. I just find this so fascinating. I love talking about it all the time.
Yep.
Really all the time I'm talking about this. Every day at least once. That subconscious, unconscious mind that makes up the vast majority of the mind. Some as much as 95%. Some people believe, some consciousness researchers believe, there are people walking around on the planet that are only operating on about 5% consciousness, which would be knowing what's real versus not real. That's one way to define consciousness, which is really hard to do, which is what this podcast is about. Not even really sure if that is possible. But to the degree that we believe that it is, that would be one definition of consciousness, that you can discern what's real, what's not real. For example, I have patients that see green spiders on my wall, and I don't see them, but that doesn't mean they're not real. It just means I don't see them. How do I try to resolve that with the people that see the spiders is, I'll let you know if I feel one crawling on me, and I'll certainly let you know if one bites me. And then I ask them, have you ever actually had one bite you? And they say no. I said, okay, well then we can live with the green spiders that you see on my wall, right? So we're still agreeing that I don't see them, he does, but they really aren't a problem. So that's something that we can live with. And we don't even get into the issue of are they real or not. They're just not really a problem. That's a subtle but very important point, that they haven't really created a problem, or they're not really, I don't have a real experience with them, even though I see them. So sometimes what you see isn't a real experience. Sometimes what you don't see is a real experience. For example, people that ride motorcycles are constantly told people can't see you. And when you hear that at first thought, you're like, what do you mean they can't see you? Well, they're thinking cars and trucks. They're not thinking cars, trucks, and motorcycles. So even though their brain sees the motorcycle, because they're not thinking motorcycles are on the highway, their brain literally doesn't register what they're seeing as an object they need to steer around, and they run straight into them. And you'll hear everybody who's ever run into a motorcycle driver, the first thing they say is, they came out of nowhere. I didn't even see them.
Yeah.
So there's also some, we've talked about this study that was done in a previous podcast, where they had people on a stage that were passing a basketball to each other. There were like 13 people on a stage, and people in the audience that were watching these people on the stage pass as a volleyball or basketball, it doesn't really matter. Uh-huh. And they were asked to just count how many times the basketball was handed from one person to another. And while this was going on, they had a person that was dressed up as an ape, in an ape costume, walk onto the stage, go like this in back of everybody, walk through the people that were passing the basketball around, and then walk off the stage. And it wasn't like ran across the stage. They were on the stage for probably 15 or 20 seconds. Okay. And then they recorded it. They recorded this. And then after the demonstration, they said, how many times did people pass the basketball? Because everybody was focused on the basketball or the volleyball being passed around. They weren't told, keep an eye out for a strange object watching across the stage. Yeah. And so over 90% of the people in the audience did not see the guy that was dressed up as an ape. And even after they showed the video of the whole thing happening again, everybody in the audience was just like, oh my God, no, I don't believe it. They still didn't want to believe that that's what actually happened. Yeah. They still, their mind would not let them believe that I did not see that happen. It still didn't happen in my mind. Isn't that wild?
It's amazing.
So I'm still getting to the point of trying to make yesterday with the lady in my office about conscious mind serves us by trying to help us understand what's real, what's not real. The next thing it tries to do is differentiate time between now and not now, or now and then, or now and tomorrow. So the subconscious, unconscious mind, it's all now. Everything's now. There is no past. There is no future. It's all right now. And that's why something like you said, that parent-child relationship issues that happen, they're in there from 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years ago. And it's still now. It's still right now to that person. And so something comes along that triggers that, or they're in a relationship that has dynamics similar to it now. It's just happening all over again. And I'm still upset and frustrated and feeling less than, or, whatever. So that's another part of the conscious mind, is differentiating time. The third thing is differentiating between self and other. And so conscious mind can say, I'm sitting here, where am I? I'm in Vista, California today, and Jim is in Colorado, near Denver, Colorado. And what you're experiencing, if somebody came up to you right now, if that ape that I was referring to a moment ago came up to you right now and slapped you in the face, and you went, oh, I would feel that. There's part of my mind that would instantly connect to what you just experienced, and my subconscious, unconscious mind would feel it on my face, and I would go, ugh, and it would hurt me too. The conscious mind is the part that would say, wow, Jim, that looked like that really hurt. Are you okay? Are you okay? But my subconscious, unconscious mind would go, man, that felt like it really hurt. And it would internalize it and have that experience as if it just had it.
Yeah.
So that's why one of the things when I do my trauma therapy with people is, even though maybe they weren't the one that got the leg amputated in the car crash, they were in the car and they saw somebody get their leg amputated, they're significantly traumatized by that because the biggest part of the mind experiences it as if it happened to them. So in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, it's not good to go expose ourselves to all these first-person shooter video games and all these violent television shows and all these war flicks and all this emergency room drama stuff, because we're literally, we talked about this in a previous podcast. The reason we do that is because it triggers a sedation experience in our brain that we get an analgesic from, and it numbs us out. So we're watching violence because we're internalizing it as if it is happening to us.
Yeah.
And we get numb from it. And then we go to bed and then we dream about it. Okay, that was quite a diatribe.
No, that was good because the reality there is that what you were saying is that numbness carries forward. That carries forward. If you think about even looking at some of the things that of late that are, like they had the 1 year anniversary of the Parkland shooting thing,
right?
And in 1 year, nothing. Except for the kids who broke out of the illusion and have chosen to take a different path in this whole process, and bringing awareness and bringing clarity and bringing things that none of the adults apparently are able to do because they're too numbed out from from watching too many of the programs or whatever the case may be. But that the adults in the room can't get the business handled because of that very issue that you're talking about. Because I believe, and again, not conspiracy theory, but I do believe that is exactly what is manipulated in our media, in television, in everywhere we go. That's what they're trying to do. That's the result is being achieved. The challenge is now we have to wake up to the fact that it is being achieved, and we are all in some form or another a part of that. I was also remembering that part two of you were asking early before we started what were some of the things I was thinking of. The other encounter that I had was with time, and it was part of my driving experience, and it was another moment of there I was trying to push to get to a destination. And maybe the car in front of me was going slow, or whatever the case, or I hit like every light, and I'm sitting there wondering what I'm feeling frustrated by. Because my mission, my purpose is the person in the back seat or the front seat, depending on where they sat, their destination is what I'm dealing with. That's my commitment. I'm taking you from point A to point B. The time thing, the judgment of I'm not there yet, it's that expression, it takes as long as it takes.
Right.
Because that's what it is. It takes as long as it takes because there are things that occur between you're living in an active environment. So stuff happens in that active environment. So yeah, my goal is to get from this corner to this corner. But to get there, I may have to take a journey, or it may go really quickly. But I don't really have any control over either of those. It's an illusion. And so when I get wrapped up in the need to define the time, I'm now in judgment of me. I'm in judgment of the universe. I'm in judgment of the person in the back seat, all of which because I've decided something that isn't completely not true because I'm not being present in the moment with what I'm doing right now. And so it becomes another way of kind of, I want to use the word right, but I want to say it right too. Obfuscating reality. Obfuscating what's going on in our reality to suit whatever perception we may have. So there is no impetus for me to be even remotely concerned about how long it takes me to get from point A to point B if I follow the GPS, because it tells me it's going to take me about 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Why do I, what is that? What is that thing that needs to deviate from that reality or change that reality or alter it or mess with it or whatever the words are? I'm not even sure. But it all ties into this same idea of reality and the different parts of our being that we view it with or experience it with.
So the lady that was in my office yesterday, you didn't meet her, but I was referencing her 10 minutes ago in our podcast.
Uh-huh.
We were talking about how we know what's real versus what's not real. And I wasn't taking a position on saying that I know. So I asked her if she had ever seen a vampire. And she said no. And I haven't seen one either.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, could you draw me a picture of a vampire? Could you tell me about a vampire? Tell me a few things about a vampire. And she told me a few things about a vampire. And I said, isn't that interesting that we both could agree that that's true about a vampire, even though you and I have never seen one. And you and I have never actually even known somebody who's seen one, but yet we could tell you where they sleep, how they sleep, what they do, what they don't do. You know, we could actually probably between the two of us, write a book about vampire.
Right.
Right. We've been taught a lot about vampires that we actually haven't had any experience with. And I said, let's take it a step further. If we went on and did a survey right now, we went around this whole complex here and asked people to tell us a few things about vampires, do you think we'd run into anybody that would say, what the heck is a vampire? Everybody knows what a vampire is. Everybody. And we could go to any country and translate it to their language, and everybody on the planet would be able to tell you what a vampire is. Maybe, I don't want to say every, but could we agree that maybe a large percentage, like a really large percentage of cultures would have some connection to a being that lives for a long time and primarily sustains off of human blood? So just take that one example, that the vast majority of people on the planet, not just in our present time,
right,
where we have all the movies and but if we went back, if we were able to do time travel, we went back 200 years ago, people would be able to tell you about a vampire. And you went back 1,000 years ago. I mean, it came from somewhere. It started somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some people on the planet could tell you exactly where it started. They weren't there and they don't know, but they believe they know that information. And it's really important to them and they hold on to that information.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating is, like what you said, as soon as you turn off that show, as soon as you turned off the news, it's not in your reality anymore. And it's like not affecting you at all. So it's just like,
unless I choose to chew on it, unless I choose to keep it stimulated in my reality, which, not typically, but it's so funny. As you were talking about that, I got caught up in my head thinking about Van Helsing.
Uh-huh.
And trying to remember if Van Helsing was an actual person or not. Like, was that person a real person, or was that another imaginary person that was made up in tangentially to the Dracula vampire thing? Was he was just a storyline, right?
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know. I am not an expert on vampires, but boy, there are some people on the planet that would really hold themselves out to be aficionados of vampires. And they probably even have something tangible that they swear a vampire wore or is in the vampire memorabilia or something, right? Yeah. That they live, breathe, eat vampire. They're all about it. And they would swear, even though they would, if they were injected with a truth serum and put on a polygraph and told the truth, would probably say they've never seen one. They desperately believe that they exist. Like people that spend their whole life's work tracking the Yeti or the Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole community up in Northern California that has a Bigfoot jamboree every year, and to them, it's real. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, it's kind of like, to me, the spiders on the wall. They, in my mind, they can exist. Doesn't change anything for me, but I don't have any personal experience. There's part of me that wants to believe it. I don't know why. And maybe we could take our podcast in that direction right now. Why do we want to believe those things? Why do we want to believe in the Loch Ness Monster and aliens and other things? Why are some of us open-minded and get excited about and want to believe those things, and others are just like, it's just a bunch of phooey?
That's a good question. And to me, I think it has as much to do with meaning and purpose as it does to almost any, as with anything. There's, you connect to things that give you a sense of there's something more, there's something greater, there's something different. I'm different, but it seems to get lodged in the how do I want to say this? Almost like it gets lodged in that lack of internalization in a way. Because it almost feels like the desire in it is to recognize some aspect of self or some aspect of my human experience that I'm not willing to give credit to, whether it's the power that I actually have, the insight that I actually have, because all of these beings and things all seem to have some sort of facility. I mean, like Bigfoot, I don't know, has a facility except for not being seen for all of my lifetime. But yeah, so that's a pretty good facility that you can be that and never be seen except as a blurry photo potentially of some, in some faraway place.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if there's not, the vampires, that's all, I mean, there's a darkness to it, but it also weaves in all of the cultural crap. It weaves in paganism. It weaves in Christianity. It weaves in the hell and the devil. And, if you peel all those beliefs and things back, it all kind of ripples out of that stuff. And I don't know. I mean, is it in a way of attempting to empower oneself? It makes it tough because it sounds like that's a silly question. But if you look at against a backdrop of internalization versus externalization, it makes a lot of sense, because there is a lack of internalization. They may have a huge belief and a huge, they have a collection and they have groups that they go to or whatever it is about that thing, but there is an attempt at internalization by developing a conviction that this is a thing. And the attachment to that conviction ends up creating more challenges because they're dealing in a reality that isn't necessarily anybody else's reality. So it seems to like, kind of this undulating, moving thing.
Yeah, you mentioned darkness for a moment. So if we gave the counterpoint, I personally don't know that I've seen an angel, but angels would be something, again, you could travel the planet and most people would be able to tell you something about angels, mm-hmm. and even give you some names of some angels. And some people would really, really be upset if you challenge their beliefs about whether they exist or not.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting that one of your responses to my question of why are some people really open to that and need it to exist, need it to be part of their experience and their reality, and others can just wipe it off as hooey or folly. And I think your answer was maybe it empowers them in some way. So if I believe in angels, for example, and I believe that I am in their good stead and I'm doing what they want me to do, then somehow that's going to give me some favor and maybe a little extra help mm-hmm. the next time I need it. Much like a four-leaf clover,
yeah,
or a leprechaun. There's another thing, leprechaun. Have you ever seen one? I mean, we could just, the list is
It's
so
endless.
long. It's so long.
Well, that goes back to where I started the conversation of recognizing how much of what I think I know of this reality I have no experience of.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean like I've only dealt with it once or twice. I've never dealt with it. I've never seen it. I've never experienced it, except the only way it's been experienced is either through a story or through a television show or through some medium that shows it to me and says this is a real thing. And here, look, it's got colors and it breathes and it eats and it does all of these things and it has a life and it has an evolution. And you go, wow, that's amazing. How is it possible? I can take that for granted. I can just accept that, but I don't have any reality to accept that. How can I accept what I have absolutely no connection to? But and then the flip side of that is, and so who cares? You know what I mean? Like the like that could be a lot of brain drain. And I'm like, well, yeah, it could be. I'm not there, flatulating myself about it. It's there because it's sort of a fascinating, amazing construct of the human experience. Is all of that about being able to be connected? Because, up until what, 20, 25, not even 20 years ago, maybe even shorter than not too much longer than that. The things that we can see and experience now, we never were able to experience or see before. When, what's going on all around the world, the stuff in Venezuela or the stuff in Syria or the stuff in Africa or any of it, the Palestine and the Israelites and the Palestinians, all of that is imaginary in my world. I have no experience of any of that. I have what I've seen or what I've heard about, but 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't even have that. We might potentially have a story that would show up on on the nightly news or in the newspaper. And if you go back a little bit further, it was on the radio. So all you had was some person's potential version of whatever it is they think is going on or whatever is supposed to be going on. I mean, that was the whole idea of the media and the news, was that it was supposed to be this, just here's information.
Right.
Here's this piece of information. Oh, well, and here's another piece of information, and here's something else you might be interested in. It's no longer.
Can we camp on that for a moment?
Yeah.
Walter Cronkite. Can you picture who that is?
Yeah.
He's still considered the most trusted man in America. So think about that for a moment when you think about where the source of the information comes from. So the news people knew that if they could get Walter to talk about a story, he could present it in such a way that it was believable.
Yeah.
And there were enough things that he did say that were provable and did happen, that the things that he didn't even know about, because I mean, all he is a mouthpiece. He wasn't the one out there traveling the world to see if all these things happened or not. But if Walter said it, it happened. If Walter said it, it was true.
Interesting.
So I'd like to, camp on that for a second about what you and I are trying to do. That I'm not, and I don't think you are, trying to claim to be a Walter Cronkite and say that, all of our facts are 100% supportable and that sort of thing. But I would like to think that we're just pushing into a field that is challenging, is difficult, and we're not claiming to know the answers or have all the information. We're just willing to ask some questions and have some dialogue about a lot of things that other people aren't willing to talk about or don't know how to talk about, or maybe have thought about but never conceptualized it or put it in words and phrases that there could be a discussion about it. But I do think it's interesting that who says it is important. It has an extra measure of weight to it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I was again taken by your statement because that we're not claiming to know more than anybody else, but the other part of this that I think is important, and it's not about knowing or not knowing. It's about that internalization of experience.
Mm-hmm.
I do very much believe that when you can embrace and internalize your own experience, and that connects to your evolution, that connects to your expansion in consciousness, that expects that all of those things can kind of build on each other, that there is a certain amount of clarity in that that may not be definable, not definable, may not be, as you were saying, things that you can hard proof kind of deals. Like here's this piece of paper that says it, which is kind of silly because the piece of paper that says it is just somebody else's opinion of the same thing. So
Right.
it's more about what happens when this information comes into your field, comes into your experience. How do you deal with it? Is it something that when you hear the topics that we talk about, do you have an experience of, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. Oh, I hadn't thought there before. And so you're being given a platform to reach however you want to reach. And there's no parameter on where that reaching goes. And that's the part that may be more about, we're not claiming to have answers, because in the end, I think we find that we have ideas, we have concepts, in some cases, maybe answers, but I don't even know that answers are required, because each individual who wants to participate with us now has the ability and the space to explore it in their own energetic experience, in their own field, and to say, yay, nay, am I getting negative pushback in my own field because of what they're saying on that show? If Jeff says, well, we don't know everything, and then I'm sitting back going, I know everything. What's he talking about? Am I having a pushback? And is that pushback about my own attachment to my limitation, or is it an attachment through my ego? Is it a necessary part of my reality? And so I'm building my arsenal to keep me protected, whatever that may be. I think all of those are viable, and I think they're all absolutely necessary, because that's how we grow and expand and become more. So I think that there's an important part of this is recognizing that when you've done your work, or when you do your work, it definitely has an impact on your understanding of what you're doing in this reality. And it also has an impact on why we're here. Doesn't mean we understand it any more deeply, but we do get bits and pieces that help kind of illuminate it in ways that are very satisfying. And in the end, that for me is what I want anyone who listens to us, who explores these thought patterns with us and goes into these concepts, is to find the point of satisfaction in the understanding, because that means that you tapped into a truth that's bigger than any of us, to me. And while we may not have all the answers to it, it's still a truth. And it's still something that has profound impact, because it takes us in directions that we've never been before, or to places that we've not allowed ourselves to experience before, and go, wow, that's a whole other different possibility I hadn't thought of, or a way of looking at the world, or my own experience that I never thought of. And that to me is what we're here for. That's what the connection, that's what the transformation is. That's what, to our conversation, I think maybe it was last week or so, the healing the world thing, the having an impact thing. It isn't so much that as it is being able to connect to people in a way that you get to experience their expansion, because it's our expansion. So I don't know if I went like way left field, but it felt very connected to what we were talking about.
Yeah. So are we still talking about what's real, what's not real, even our experiences? I was trying to give a couple of examples about how we can have real experiences, but even those experiences are not proof and they can be deceptions. Like a mirage, for example. People could see, they could swear they could see water up ahead, and you keep walking and you keep walking and you never get there. Or you swear that the rainbow is just 2 houses over from where you are, the end of it, and the pot of gold is right there. But as you keep moving, the rainbow keeps moving and
Yeah.
never get there, right? So there's even if you stare at a black object and then you move your eyes to the right on a white wall, you'll see the black object on the white wall just for a few nanoseconds. So you're literally seeing something that's not there.
Yeah.
Or you look out in the night sky and you look at starlight, and some of the light that we're seeing is coming from stars that are no longer there because they exploded, but we haven't seen the explosion yet. We're still seeing the stream of light traveling to us that literally isn't there. I mean, it's there, but it's not there. If that makes any sense.
It does.
No,
go ahead. Sorry.
It's so hard. And I would ask why we need to know the truth more than do we need to know the truth? Why is it so important to us that we have to have something to stand on, sit on, believe in, rather than just to keep going through the experience? It's a great experience. This thing that we're doing here on the planet is great. It's painful and it's orgasmic at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a thing for that if you want to go there.
Yeah. Well, I have this supposition to throw out with regard to what you were saying, and that is that as I look at the hundreds of people that I've worked with over the years, and even just maybe not even worked with, but people that I've experienced, and the thing that has always been absolutely fascinating to me is this sort of I see it in my mind as like a multidimensional geometric thing, in that everyone in the beginning is searching for their truth. And so their truth is going to be whatever it is based on their experience, their core vibration, their energy. They establish what they perceive to be their truth until something comes through the experience that alters or impacts that truth in a way that forces them to relook at it.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is that we're not trained, I don't think, to look at the world that way. So it becomes an enemy instead of if it's a good thing, then it's a good thing. If it's a bad thing, it's a no thing. You know what I mean? If I have this reality and something confronts it that says that's trying to show me that my reality is not real, or is manufactured, or is whatever part of it that isn't working, we tend to resist that rather than embrace it. As a species, I think we tend to fight those types of change. But my point is that over time, what I've come to see is that if you stay within your reality and within the truth of what you see as your reality, and you honor your process throughout along the way, there is a point in the evolution of that process where we all come to the same truths. Mm-hmm. From different perspectives, but the truths are exactly the same. And you could ask someone about that truth and they would have a whole different experience of how they got there. But the differences begin to diminish the closer you get to it. So the first stage away from the truth, the stories are pretty similar. The second stage, they're still similar, maybe a little different. The third stage, they're starting to depart. By the fourth and fifth and sixth stages of events or things that occurred, the things that have been evolving in each individual's experience are completely different. They have no relationship. They're not even close to one another. But by virtue of internalizing it and bringing it forward and allowing it to evolve, we end up taking all of those steps and end up at the same place. That to me is mind-blowing. If you think about 7.5 billion people doing their thing every single day and wanting to believe this and some believe that, and you have as many different constructs of belief systems as there are people. And yet, if we track their evolution, there are points in that evolution where we will meet in the exact same spot. In consciousness, in energy, in vibration. And it just speaks to me of the things that I've learned and listened to over the years of this idea about it all being energy. And so when there is that when the resonance is there, when the harmonics are there, when the alignment is there, there is only the truth. There isn't versions. There's just the.
Mm-hmm.
That, at least in my experience. I'd be curious what your thoughts are about that.
Can you be more specific on that question, please?
Just the overall concept of this idea that we all start in our isolated experiences, but as we evolve, as we grow, as we come together, we actually come into a unified space in truth, wherever the truth ends up. Even in our conversations and when you and I and Timothy were doing this, we would have differences of experience, but when we plotted the course through it, we seemed to, in the end, find that the only thing that was different was that we, through our experience, had different choices of language or made a different word choice. And then as we talked about those word choices, we realized we were saying the exact same thing. It was just,
right.
it was the second degree perspective instead of the fourth degree perspective, or and I don't know where that's coming from, but that the idea that it's this multifaceted thing that has all of these perspectives, but the truth is still the truth.
Yeah.
Depends on where you look at it.
Yeah. And that's why I think our podcast has gone on as long as it has, is we're still pushing into the idea of what is truth.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly there's a lot of ways to approach it, look at it, try to understand it, touch it, feel it. I'm still trying to answer your question. What's coming to my mind right now is maybe one way of attempting that is, are eggs good for you or not? Is it good to eat orange juice in the morning or drink orange juice in the morning or not? And there's, depending upon when you grew up, where you grew up, we've heard different things. We've heard one decade eggs are okay, the next decade they're not. It's like, well, wait a second, how did this change? And then somewhere along the way, you read a book or you get a little bit more understanding. For example, there's a book out there called Eat Right for Your Blood Type, and the notion is that there is no one diet that's right for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be as simple as your blood type is going to be the base upon which things resonate for you to eat or not eat. And just so sometimes what's true for one person may not be true for another person.
In most cases is true. At least if you look at the world that we currently live in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find
so
that
we're still trying to, I think, establish some universal truths. For example, if you practice kindness, and you'd have to define that, are you going to have a better day than if you're practicing selfishness? Well, I really don't know if that's true for everybody. It might be a majority truth. And I don't even care if it's true for everybody or not. Again, we're just having fun talking about different things that, again, I don't think a lot of other people are trying to put concepts and principles around that it's interesting enough for us to keep having the podcast.
No. Well, and then that begs the question is you have to define what's better. Because the person who's doing the thing that is perceived as negative, it may be exactly what they need to be doing to reach the truth that they've been unable to reach.
Right.
So it's still completely valid. And I think that's kind of ties us back to the original idea about the fact that there is the reality that the only reality that I have is what I have actually seen, touched, tasted, or felt in my own field, in my own experience. And because I recognize the limitation of that experience, I can no longer be in a space of judgment of anyone else's experience because I'm not in their experience and they're not in mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea what the impact of their choices are. Their choices in my life may be astronomically bad or good, but they're not my choices. They're theirs. So to to honor my reality, I have to honor all realities, whatever they may be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, I may have a gift or a perception or an ability or a way to speak about what I understand about my experience that resonates for people. That was, I was saying before, that makes them sit up a second and go, "Oh, hadn't thought about that," or it twinges something deep in them that they have no idea what it is, but it stimulates a desire to understand something different or more or whatever. Um, so I love the again the idea that I know there's more to this. You know,
Yeah.
there's this something still rumbling deeper about what is it that this understanding of reality is about. So we have these, you know, we have these things that we agree upon, like a chair and a table and a lamp and a car, and but what about all the stuff we don't? You know, so all that we can do from our perspectives, and I think it ties back to what you were saying about about not really knowing answers, because we can't answer anything for somebody else. We can only present alternative viewpoints, we can present perspectives, we can present a different vibration, and people can step into that and kind of go take a shower in it and go, yeah, not my thing, I'm moving, it doesn't resonate in my energy, so it's not me,
Yeah.
therefore it's not my reality, therefore these people are crazy and I don't know what the hell they're talking about, you know. And then there are the ones that would shower in it and go, oh my gosh, so many things that I can take from this and just explore my own reality with, you know. And those are that to me is just incredibly rewarding and powerful, because you get to plant seeds or ideas or concepts and let people use their own energy and power to explore them further. Which I think you
You
do
remember?
remarkably well, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm still I was thinking about the question that I asked about 10 minutes ago, is the question of why. Why do we need to know the truth? Why do we have this obsession with the truth when perhaps it really isn't knowable? And perhaps it's only knowable individually, that there isn't going to be a consensus, as much as we would like to have one, so that I could know that I'm not crazy for the truth I believe. Even though you don't agree with my truth, it can still be my truth.
You so Jody, you remember Jody Fedor? Um, so she's in Thailand now, or Bali, I think. She lives in Bali. Um, and she had posted she does these kind of blog post things every now and again. And she posted this blog post like day before yesterday that was as if she was taking the words right out of my brain. I mean, like she took a sieve, sucked the shit out of my head, and then put it on paper. And it was stunning, because it wasn't almost like, it was exactly like. The only differences were the circumstances of her experience, the environment that she was in. Hadn't, but, and the piece was all about relating to transformation and consciousness, and the expansion of consciousness is not about peace, love, and joy every minute. It's not about, you know, rainbows and unicorns. It is about those things, but it's also recognizing that there are days that you don't feel good. There are days that things just suck. And that's okay, because that's part of the experience. The challenge of it all is how we engage those days, how we engage that experience. Do we run and
Right.
hide from it and fight it? Or do we embrace it as even more of our power and understanding of who we are?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that was the thrust of her thing. And I that was my comment back to her. was, thank you for speaking my words. It's like, this is really wild. But those are to me the points of validation that show up in the process that sometimes seem, and largely seem, maybe unnecessary or even few and far between. But when they show up in a way that just blows the roof off the house to me at this stage of my life. To be able to pick up a telephone and read something on Facebook that was written by somebody in Thailand or in wherever she is, expressing exactly what I believe and know to be true in my own experience, is the most incredibly validating thing you can possibly experience. Because how could that be true? How could that happen if there wasn't a common place that we all originate from in some form? If there wasn't truth that is universal to all of us, we just strive to get there from here. And I don't mean that I mean, it's not about homogenizing anything. It's about recognizing that duality of separation and oneness, and that we live it every single day, and that we strive to understand it more deeply because we live it every single day. And I can't think of anything that brings me more joy than to be able to sit in these concepts and let what I call my higher self, or the universe, or the great white buffalo, as you would say, trample across my experience and go, wow, where does that go? And I love that we can put that out in the middle of the space, and at any time, either of us can jump in the middle of it and have very valid and powerful things to contribute to moving that idea or thought forward, or expanding it or contracting it. And that you can watch that all going on. It's just, that's my answer. That's my why, I mean, that went off on a whole other place too.
Yeah.
We get to places where we can we could go into the subchambers of these conversations and get lost for days.
Well, one of the things I'm experiencing right now is this notion of the number of years that I've been pursuing information and accumulating it and calling it education, or whatever you want to call it, and in pursuit of trying to understand and to know through experience and through others' experiences and what they've written and talked about. And the more, I've been at this a while, and so have you.
Yeah.
We have our gray hair to prove it. And that's only going to increase as my hunger for knowledge and information and experience and awareness and being awake, it's only going to increase. And both of us will have more time to do that as we make a shift in our priorities of working less and reading more and writing more and sharing more. That's only going to expand there. My prediction is, this is my hypothesis and prediction, is that it's just not knowable. The big it is just not knowable.
Here in the physical body, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, when you were talking about, I can't remember what you were talking about, but my response was, well, how do you know that's just not the bacteria inside your gut that is just flatulated and there's been a transfer in the blood-brain barrier and it's presenting a signal to go get more of that or do more of that? So it's because most of us aren't aware that there are actually living organisms in our intestinal tract that do have direct influence to the mind to get it to do things. And how about solar flares? There are some people that are really tuned in to when there's a solar flare and they're affected by it. Or here's another one. I remember what you said. It was about the lady in Bali who was connecting with you on, sometimes there are just hard phases in your life or difficult times. And the first thought in my mind was, it's just Mercury being in retrograde, right? Because there's so much. So I went macro with Mercury being in retrograde, and I also went micro with, is it the bacteria or is it Mercury or is it everything in between. Is it the sun, Mercury, or is it the bacteria in your gut that made that difficult thing? And you're not going to know, because every one of those are possible little variables, and all the variables add up to have a shift, to have an effect.
They're all
and we're so narrow in our focus of what we think these leverage points are, or these things that move us or that we're drawn to, these energies. We're so narrow in our awareness and our understanding of it. That's what I love about this dialogue, is that it's going to break open, and hope, even if it's just for you and I, which would be fine, to understand more about all that's going on in terms of our experience, what we're experiencing.
I like that.
Do you have any sense whether it was bacteria, solar flares, or Mercury retrograde?
No, but to your point, and to our original question about reality and the perception of what I perceive in my reality, it just drives home how much we don't know.
Yeah.
It drives home how much we have no clue how, we still don't have any clue how this physical body manages to make it through 100 years. No, nobody, we have a lot of supposition, a lot of maybe physical science, maybe some biological science, maybe some, but truly when you come down to recognizing that the cell, that one cell is an organism unto itself, you go, I don't know anything. And my perception of anything is greatly limited, and it's apparently limited on purpose. Meaning, I only have 5 senses that I can perceive, when I have the 6th sense, which I use a lot, and that helps to expand my perception of the 4 dimensions or 3 dimensions. Yeah. Which is it?
Yeah.
So, but in the end, the only thing I know about reality is what I have directly experienced. Everything else is nonsense and made up or created or agreed upon for whatever reason that I don't quite comprehend yet either. And the idea of, why do we all agree a chair is a chair?
Right.
I guess because it creates uniformity, but I don't want to go there. Sorry, go ahead.
So I believe that I have seen ghosts, and I believe that I've seen UFOs, and I believe that I've seen an angel. And I could go into all the details on what makes me believe that I've had those experiences. Mm-hmm. Those weren't just something I watched on TV. They were real to me, physical, energetic experiences. Mm-hmm. But I can't say anything more than those were just my experiences. And I don't need to try to prove it to anybody. I'm certainly curious about what those experiences were, because they defy the laws that I understand that physics works in. Mm-hmm. And it's just makes me very curious.
And I've not experienced any of those things, and I still have a curiosity, but from a very different perspective. Because and I think that's it's fascinating, it's amazing, and we can share and talk about those experiences, even though one of us has had and the other has not. And I think that's pretty interesting. It doesn't get shut down.
But I'm being led to circle back to the lady in my office where we were talking about the conscious mind, unconscious mind, and whatnot. And the point that I was trying to get her to, she was having panic attacks. And a lot of people are anxious. There's a sense, there's a new diagnosis in society just called overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Just overwhelmed. In my opinion, it's because of all of the things that we are allowing to come into our conscious mind that we're afraid of. There's a fear. It's fear that's driving all of this. And even though, like you said, as soon as I turn off the TV show, as soon as I turn off the television, that's no longer in my consciousness. You're absolutely right. but you better believe that it's in your subconscious mind.
Yep.
And because that is the bigger part of the mind, it doesn't shut that TV show off. You just scared it. Again, you gave it more crappy food to eat, and it now has a stomach ache, and we call that anxiety. And I know that was a really weird metaphor, but I hope you followed me through it.
I followed you. I thought it was great.
Okay, but we're eating crappy food through the information that we expose ourselves to on a epidemic, horrific, addictive level.
Yeah.
Almost every newscast has, and I don't know these numbers, it's just my experience, is about 90% of it is going to be something bad happened, something's wrong, versus a good feeling story. So that's all the news.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the entertainment that's on television, there's going to be a shooting, a murder, an injury, somebody's cheating on somebody. There's a crime being committed somewhere against somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's why we watch these things. There's going to be a supernatural disaster. There's some key piece of negativity, of drama. Lots and lots of drama. And we as a culture are so addicted to all of that. The lady was telling me that, she doesn't have a whole lot of excitement in her life, so she watches horror films. And I said, and you wonder why you're anxious. You have absolutely scared to death your subconscious, unconscious mind.
Oh.
It believes in every one of those scenarios. It believes in every one of those characters. And it's only through you not watching that stuff and reprogramming your mind with rainbows and unicorns and gummy bears and kindness. And, it's that's going to overcome it. Anyway, I digress.
No. I actually, again, it's so amazing to me when we have these conversations, how within our own consciousness, it just pings and lights go off. And, what I was hearing again while you were talking was, how incredible is it that we all chose to be here now?
Mm-hmm.
We chose to be here now with all of the things you just talked about as what? As I know where I'm going. I just got to find the word for this part. In an environment that constantly challenges us and forces us to go inside, to go in to find your truth, go in to find what's real, find out what's real for you, not what they say, not what they do, not what the TV says, but all of those things now are out there as a way of how what if the whole thing is a giant experiment that's about how much can you stay connected to self when all of that shitstorm is going on? And that we chose to be here now means that's really what the challenge we've taken on, because we're here. Mm-hmm. We're living this experience. And I think it's important that that we don't ever dumb it down. That while those things don't serve in the large panorama, they obviously serve each individual for whatever reason in their experience. The question is, how do those of us that can that have a little better ability to see around it, how do we assist people to disconnect from that or to find their truth within it? What is because the things you're talking about are very real. When you program your subconscious in that fashion, you do yourself a gargantuan disservice, because it just means you have that much more crap to clear out, in your own, and does it ever clear out, or is it, again, where do we go with it from there? So all of our realities are eminently valid because they're ours.
They are. Yeah.
and now,
and I love that you brought us back to that point, Jim. And I'd like to again circle back to if you could go sit on the other side of the room with me in my consultation office and imagine being there. As I've had more than probably 5 or 6, usually men, tell me that they're having visual hallucinations in my office at the time they're in there with me. And I'm not trying to convince them that they're not having that experience. It's pointless, because they are having that experience, and they're going to continue having that experience. I don't even suggest that they go get on medication for it, because oftentimes the side effects of the medications are, bring about another problem that makes what they're dealing with not as big of that as that problem. But where I'm going with this is, I actually tried to catch one of the spiders one time. I said, okay, I believe that you are seeing these. I would really like to try to catch one. And I was going around my office and putting my hands on the wall, and I was like, is it right here? Is it here? And as soon as I would put my hands on it, he wouldn't see it anymore. And again, we were just laughing. And I'm like, I think a lot of people would be scared of you or scared of these spiders, but I'm not afraid of you or the spiders. And I can live just fine with these spiders. I've had one guy that there was a little green guy in the room with us. I had another one that there was voices coming through the computer that he was hearing and, telling him to do bad things. And I'm like, well, somehow you've learned how to not do those bad things. And it's just like a fly in the background that is bothering you, but you've lived quite well with it. Let's just live with it. So if we could start there, from accepting the different realities that people are having and try not to judge them, and just say, can you learn to live with it and live well? Because that's what we're trying to do, is can we live well? Right. Can we be at peace with ourselves? And we be at peace with others, and not have to keep trying to prove our reality is the right reality.
It is for us.
Friday morning, I had a chance to watch the president's national emergency speech.
Oh, mercy.
And, I live in San Diego, and I've been here a long time. It's fairly close to the border. And I've been down to Baja many, 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 many times. I mean, lots, 50 times. And I'm aware of where the wall is. I've seen many parts of it. And this whole thing is, I don't know that we're being invaded. I'm not that interested in it. So I really don't know if we're being invaded by sex traffickers and criminals. I really don't know what the point is of this wall, and why we need it so badly, and why there's even military protecting our borders now. And it's like, what is this really all about? And we're probably never going to know. We probably will just never know really what it's all about. And he even said something since his administration started. He's like, we've already built a lot of the wall. Or he said something like, we've already made progress on a bunch of it. Like, I wasn't aware that even one brick had been laid yet, or one piece of fence had been put up. But that just means I don't know. That's all.
Yeah.
But it was just like the way it's being communicated, the difference between the way it's being communicated and what is actually happening, it seems very different. And I just don't want to be frustrated by it. And it's not that I don't care. If we do have atrocities being committed at the border, and there are ways of preventing that, then that would be a good thing to do. But to go create something when there's nothing to go do is a whole different issue. And I don't even know what that's about. But anyway, I don't know if that was applicable to our podcast or not.
Well, again, it's all about truths. It's about my reality versus that reality, or their reality. Yeah. And the part of it that I was talking about earlier, about the reality TV show aspect to me, is the thing that also blows my mind, is that this man can literally stand in front of a group of people and tell flat out lies. I mean, like, not like marginal lies, but flat out lies, and nobody calls him on it. They'll talk about it for hours. They'll spend an entire day talking about the stuff that comes out of his mouth, but no one will stand up and say, you're full of shit. Why do you keep telling lies? Why do you keep doing that? Because apparently he thinks they're real. But anyway, it's again, all these realities colliding. And how do you integrate them?
there were two things he said in his speech that, as a psychotherapist, I'm wondering, because it seems like they're lies, and I'm wondering if the way he's saying it, he's just really failing to explain that in his mind. For example, when he said, we've already made a lot of progress on the wall, my mind says that means bricks and fence and barbed wire. It means something physical. In his mind, since he's been a contractor and a builder his whole life, that may mean permits, that may mean funding, that may mean EPA surveys. And to him, the actual physical construction of it is the part that happens at the very end. That's like, if you lay out the whole process, that might be the last 10% is actually the physical piece. So really in his mind, he may think that we've made huge progress on the wall, even though there hasn't been one brick built yet. Maybe all the EPA studies have been done. Maybe in his mind, he just doesn't communicate that part very well. And he said something else that was, when he said, I didn't even really have to do this. Yeah. And that was, everybody I think took it as, I didn't have to declare this national emergency. But right. What I think he was trying to say was, I don't really have to do this wall. My base is still behind me. I don't really have to do this just for the 2020 presidential nomination. Am I going to run for another term? Because that's what everybody was saying is, this is just a political ploy for you to, prime all of this and get your base to still stand behind you for another run at the presidency. So I think he just failed at what did he mean when he said, I didn't have to do this? Because there were two different things on the table. There was the national emergency and there was the wall. And it's like, well, which one were you talking about in that moment? So I've noticed several times when he says things, he's not very good at being specific about what he's saying and laying it out in a way that's more explainable. And that's not me trying to defend him. That's me just trying to go, wow, you really suck at communicating, dude.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting and powerful perspective because, again, it speaks to different realities. His reality is not it seems apparent that much of his reality has been criminal in nature in some form or another, but the way that it's unfolding, but that's just another perspective. That's just another way of looking at the world. And so he, like you're saying, he's looking at it through his energy. He's looking at it through his ability to translate what his five senses are presenting to him. And good, bad, or indifferent, that's what it is. But that's, again, I think that to what we started back with originally when you were asking me about when I said I think he's an idiot. Similar thing, the lack of internalization causes a disconnect because you're not owning what your truth is. You're not standing in your truth. You're not living that truth. It's out here somewhere and it hasn't come in yet. But I also want to acknowledge I recognize that as a part of my reality that and the stuff that we've been talking about. It's if you spend time watching the news, you have to spend equal amount of time shifting your energy around watching the news because even when you do, stuff still gets stuck. Stuff still gets, because what's sticking is not the stuff that per se that he's doing. It's the way it impacts and stimulates my vibration, the stuff that's in my energy, my belief systems, my ideas, my perception of reality. What he's doing is triggering my own understanding or my own lack of perception. But it's important to recognize that the impact is there. You can never diminish the impact ever because it's constructed and designed to impact. So it's one of those things where I don't think we really have a lot of choice in it except not to engage it.
Yeah.
So if you do engage it, you have to be aware that when you do, you are allowing that stuff to go in. It's not an option. The question is, what are you doing after the fact to bring your vibration out of that energy so that you're not living in that space? And I think that's where we get in trouble. It's where I get in trouble.
So when I was watching it yesterday, I was telling myself, this should be happening right now because it is, and coming up with statements like he shouldn't be the president or we shouldn't be discussing the wall is arguing with reality, and that's only a schism. So he should have declared a national emergency because he did, and because that's how he thinks, and that was a strategy that he wanted to employ. So to me, I looked at it as it's all happening. To me, it's humorous. I actually think all of it's very funny, and I can watch it and laugh at it, both at the supporters and the opponents. They're all coming from a very opposing position, and it's funny in their responses. And even the dialogue where the one reporter was really trying to be persistent, and the president says, "You sit down right now," and he pointed at him and said, "You will sit down," or something like that, and the guy didn't sit down. That to me was so funny. I just burst out laughing in that moment of what was happening there, and how polarized all of this has become.
Yeah.
And maybe like you were saying earlier, when we go through hard things, we can learn from the mistakes and do it better the next time, and it could serve that purpose. What got us here was politics left alone and just running as the political system needed to change. And I'm not saying this is a better change, but it definitely is creating change.
Well, I think
it may not be the right change.
No, I think it's just in process. I don't know that there's any right or wrong. I think the upheaval is illuminating things that we have not paid attention to for a long time.
Yeah.
And
when he said that he has a great relationship with President from North Korea, I'm like, so how many times have you met?
Yeah.
And you're going to call that a great relationship, huh? Okay, well, I have a bunch of great relationships then. But what I do give him credit for is they talked. They actually went and talked. They met each other, as opposed to an embargo or I'm not talking to you. Well, I'm too good to talk to you. I thought it was great that they actually got together and felt each other's energy. And
and that maybe anyway, there's a story there that's equally not real, but you never know, that's more that what we don't know, how much of this reality we don't know. And we have no experience of, except whatever imagination and stuff we can make up to fill in the gaps. And so I think that's it. The empowering thing for me is, as we bring this full circle today, I think is in recognizing that idea of just being able to sit in the idea of how much we don't know, and that the limited perception we have through our reality is such a small slice of the vividness of all of reality. Or is it? Don't know. Because I can't experience what's outside of my reality. I can't experience what's outside of my field. It's how do you do that? So that then brings us to a similar place that we come to, which is then it must be my responsibility to expand my experience of reality. And if that's my responsibility, what does that look like for me in my reality? How do I engage the world? Why do I engage the world? What am I engaging? And for what reason? Those questions, I think, all come from that space of you can choose to see the limitation. You can choose to see the narrowness of the perception as a limitation, or you can choose to see it as the arena that I have to play in, and that arena is expandable.
Right.
I think depending on your perception will depend on how much growth you find, and how much joy you find, and how much peace you find. Because the more you go there and expand it, the more you find that it's enough, and that it's amazing, and that it's even in the context of my own limited five senses, I can have extraordinary experiences in my in my life, in my world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is breathtaking in its scope, because the amount of freedom and power that exists in that space is mind-blowing to me, even though it's a limited perception. Could you imagine if we weren't limited by the five senses and we were able to take in everything? I somehow think that would be a bit overwhelming. Maybe I say that to make myself feel better. Maybe it's true.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know.
that'd be like looking at all the podcasts going on right now, being able to expose yourself to all of them right now.
Oh, I'd have a
A little
headache.
bit overwhelming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd definitely be a headache. But
This
that's an
morning,
interesting. Yeah.
this morning, as I was coming over here, I was leaving the harbor, and the surfers were disappointed this morning that wanted to go out and do their thing, because the rain that we've had has put all these rivers that don't normally flow in flow mode, and all the pollution, the contaminants or whatever bacteria, that it's all in the ocean right now, and they've been advised not to go expose themselves to that.
Oh,
So they're all disappointed that they can't go surfing. And yet there's all these other people standing at the seashore this morning watching chocolate waves. And it was beautiful. And
wow.
we normally see blue and green, and it was milk chocolate today. And it was so amazing just to see this huge sea of milk chocolate and the waves that you would normally see crashing. It's kind of cool.
So what? All the sediment from the river flow going out into the. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Amazing. Yep. Amazing. Well, this has been quite an amazing conversation. I've enjoyed this a lot, and I want to thank everybody out there who's riding the wave with us, and hopefully we're stimulating your energy in a positive way, and you're getting to dive with us and explore with us, and hopefully down the road here we'll be able to open it up and actually maybe even do some live things where we can actually engage people and hear firsthand what's happening. But we'd love for you to. We're in the process of migrating. We do have our YouTube page at Adventures in Truth podcast on YouTube. We have our Facebook page in the same name, Adventures in Truth podcast, and we'll have some more information shortly about our migration. We've started recording in a different format, and I think we're about to take this puppy on the road, whatever that means.
Nice.
So, do you have anything in closing today, my friend?
Yeah, I'd like to encourage people to just practice peace more, like you said, and try to mitigate the drama that we expose ourselves to. You know, we all come here, I think, to have a certain amount of drama in our lives and to experience that. I would just ask people to be more mindful and cautious on what the right amount of that would be, so that as you're sleeping at night and as you're going about your business, that massive part of the mind, that subconscious, unconscious mind, it's scared. It's really scared. And that means fear, that there's a lot of fear promoting our experience, when we really could make more of a shift toward love and peace. And that would be something I'd really love to be a part of and help promote.
Cool. And part of that is through the process of disengaging those things that we know don't serve, right? The things that promote that continuous fear. While, watching the news may be the thing you've been doing for 40 years because that's where you get your information, it may be time to find a new way to get information.
Yes.
Or begin to reduce the amount of that information.
Exactly. Find a balance.
Yeah.
Find a balance. And none of what we just said is a judgment. It's just a challenge, and finding a balance.
Yeah, no, it can't be. I mean, it's funny that you say that, because I didn't and have not watched news in a lot of years, like 20, and all of that goes on now has me so fascinated that I find myself engaging it more than I ever have. But there's a ramification to that engagement, and I have to be very aware of that ramification, lest it make me miserable. Because it's going to show up in my world somewhere. It may
Yeah.
not show up as a political conversation, but it could show up in the road while I'm driving and have some stupid road rage incident over some guy that I've suddenly judged by all the crap that I've been letting flow in my head.
Yeah.
That wouldn't normally cause me effect. So anyway, it's just being aware and making those gentle shifts in the migration to that. What's my reality and what is the reality I want? What do I want to feel? What do I want to experience? What do I want out of this experience? And I think
Right.
most of us want that joy, that peace, that expansion, And if you want to be unhappy, good for you. Keep at it. It's possible.
It's easy.
It is. But thank you again, and looking forward to our next. And thank you all out there for joining us, and have an amazing day.
All right. So long, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.